Hi. I've been catching up on the remaining Oscar films that I haven't watched, and this week I rented from my local library Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Now, I've never been overly keen on Quentin Tarantino's films. I actually skipped The Hateful Eight completely, I still haven't seen it. And the only one of his films that I really liked, as opposed to merely tolerated, was Inglourious Basterds, which I enjoyed as a pastiche of World War II Men on a Mission movies. And I liked that, given that the films themselves have so little to do with history, that the film dispenses with this altogether and ends with Hitler being machine gunned in Paris in 1944. Um, but Tarantino has continued this ahistorical practice with Django Unchained and now with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. The story is that of Rick Dalton, an aging cowboy actor. Let's say aging, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, in 1969, reduced to doing TV guest roles, and convinced that his career is on the skids, whilst he tries to reawaken his enjoyment of acting and the opportunities that might be presented going to work in Italy. Um, in the background, the Manson family is brewing and preparing for something terrible. It's a very long film, 2 hours 40 minutes, and there is not enough material to fill that time. It is a very plot light film. There are long sequences with Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, as a supporting character where she doesn't do anything. She wanders around her home, she listens to music, she goes to see a film which she's in, she gives someone a lift. These really don't do anything or add anything. She has very little dialogue of consequence, and she seems to be there as little more than an object into which the director can pour his particularly queasy, to my instincts, fetishization of nostalgia, and also of women's feet, because there's a lot of foot fetishism in this movie, and it's really getting beyond a joke. It's one thing to have a particular interest of one's own, it's another to just be creepy and exploitative about it. Um, the main supporting actor is Brad Pitt, who plays Dalton's factotum driver stuntman. And although Pitt has been very highly praised for his performance, and it's far from a bad performance, he doesn't really do very much or have very much to do. We know very little about him. It's mentioned that he's believed to have murdered his wife and got away with it, but apart from one brief flashback, we're never given any substance to this at all. And it feels like it's a problem with the film as a whole. Tarantino's works are generally very superficial. He seems to not be capable or struggle with the idea of nuance or depth, really, giving his characters anything more than the most basic character traits. So as a result, everything just feels very superficial, and as a portrait of a time and place that he wants us to wallow in, it feels phony. It feels like a theme park, because there's no real substance to it. It's just all streets and storefronts and movie sets. There's never anything behind it, unless there's trying to draw some kind of parallel between the Western backlots on which Rick Dalton works and the 1969 streets of Los Angeles that the cars drive down, unless we're supposed to see some parallel between the two. In which case, yes, a movie is a movie. Tarantino's films rarely have anything to say. They fetishize violence in the way that this film particularly does. Violence as catharsis and as a means of psychological release in a way that is celebratory rather than interrogative. It makes me uneasy. The film starts quite badly, and I was getting very bored at how self-indulgent it was. It does settle down after a while and becomes quite tolerable, but it's very much a bitty, self-indulgent, sprawling mess. There's very little focus to it, and there's no discipline, which is the problem with all of his movies. The Hateful Eight was, I think, over 3 hours long. This is, as I say, 2 hours 40 minutes, so it's significantly shorter. But I don't know what it's for. I don't know what he's saying other than, weren't the good old days great? Except he says that in all of his films. So, once again, I'm baffled as to why his films are so popular. And although it's a well-made film with competent performances, there's no depth to any of the characters. In the case of Sharon Tate, she exists purely as a symbol. The ending of the film, which rewrites history regarding the Manson family, felt to me as somewhat bad taste, even though Tate's surviving sister gave it her personal approval. So, you know, that certainly takes the edge off. But rewriting history in that way, purely for a sense of catharsis, was something that you could do in a World War II movie involving Hitler. When it's something as recent and as fresh in the cultural zeitgeist as the murder of Sharon Tate and her friends, it doesn't feel like you should do that. So I wouldn't recommend it. I wouldn't recommend most of his films personally. I wouldn't watch it.